I've been in this business now for 30 years. 30 years is a long time for a performer. And I've probably had maybe 3 months off in those 30 years. I've had to keep reinventing myself. I've been acting, doing stand-up comedy, playing music, modelling, teaching, now talking. I haven't had to do any other job. 90% of actors, how many people in this room ever wanted to be an actor, a performer? There's a few people. Oh, they're two up the back. They look like Tina Arena too. So you could have been Tina, you could have been singers. You can sing as well. Or you could go on The Voice maybe. It's never too late. So 90%, and out of you guys, how many of you guys are from another country? Like not Skippy the Bush Kangaroo. How many people are not Skippy the Bush Kangaroo Aussie? Like Paul Hogan Aussie. How many? A lot of us. And that's how I was. So 99% of us actors are unemployed. You can't find, when I first started acting, I couldn't be one of the mainstream actors. I was looking for an agent, and I went to an agency, and I wasn't on the main board with all the other actors, with Russell, even though Russell Crowe's New Zealand, with all the other actors, Peter O'Brien and Rebecca Gibney. I was over here, on the other wall. I was on the ethnic wall, because that's the only parts that I could do, was ethnic characters. Now it's a bit different in Australia because we've broken a few barriers and we're considered as part of the mainstream, because when you look at this room, look at us. We're all from somewhere else, we're all considered Australians. That's the beauty about us. What a lucky country this is, to have so many nationalities, this is like the World Cup of countries. We're all in here together, and most of us probably can play soccer, I don't know. So that's the thing. That's how hard it is for an ethnic Australian to become an actor in the mainstream and keep working. So this is how I, George, got into doing what I do. So I'm from a Greek family. My mum and my dad are Greek Australians. They came out here in early 60s, or 1960 they came out here. Couldn't speak English. And I came along a little bit later. So when I was a kid, when I was a little boy, at home the only language that I spoke was Greek. I didn't speak any other language. So I didn't speak English until I started primary school, which is 4.5, 5. So already I was behind the 8 ball, because English is a big part. If you want to be an actor in this country, English, you've got to speak English. So if your vocab isn't as good as the other kids, my English is my second language, actually. If your vocab isn't good, then you're behind the gun. And some people just give up, Some people try it and then just give up. But I kept going, So, and that was my natural ability when I was a kid. My natural ability was to act. I didn't want to become an actor. I wanted to be an architect, like Peter Brady on the, is that his name? No, Greg Brady on the Brady Bunch. And later on, yeah, I didn't want to be that. But there you go. I'd never even thought about it, but acting was my natural ability. I want to play footy. I want to play soccer. I want to be a sportsman, because we love sports. Even now, kids love sportsmen. They look up to them. But I wasn't really tall or athletic, But my natural ability, listening, my natural ability was to act. And at school, I was always involved in putting on a play or a performance. Or I used to be like a little smart ass at school. I used to get sent out of the room all the time for showing off. I was show off. It was my natural thing to perform in front of a crowd. One-on-one, I'm very shy. I don't talk to people well one-on-one. I can't look at people in the eyes. I get very, very, I'm not good at that. But when I talk to a crowd, that's my natural thing to do, is to talk to a crowd. I love doing that. So I was made to do this job, more or less. I'm a show pony. I was made to perform. That's what I do. Other people are good athletes. Other people, I can't hammer a nail. I can't even do that thing with the Allen key. But you buy furniture from IKEA and you have to put it yourself. Get Allen to do it. He invented the Allen key. I don't want to do it. I'm not good at doing that sort of thing. I'm good at performing. That's what I do. Even if I didn't want to do it, that's what I was made to do. That was my God-given gift, was to be a performer. 30 years later, I'm still doing it. So there I am at school, going through school, then always involved in drama. I actually did drama in HSC with my final year at school. It wasn't a subject when I did it. In the 70s, now it's like you get marked on it, you get grades for it, and becomes part of your final score. It didn't for me. So I wasted a subject in my final year of, year 12 at high school because I did drama, because I was so passionate about drama. I loved it. I loved doing it. It was a natural thing for me. But I didn't get marked for that. But because I did drama in HSC, that when it was time to choose my course, my tertiary institution course, I got into drama because I was so good at drama, and I picked it, and it was a part of. So it's a choice that you make sometimes that takes you into another. Instead of going, no, I won't do drama because I'll do modern maths or something like that. That wouldn't have gotten me into drama. So sometimes you've got to sacrifice things and make choices that take you onto a road that leads you onto, something that you're going to do later. So you've got to take those opportunities when they come up. So I've done drama at school. I've done really well at it. I got my HSC in the end with 4 subjects instead of 5, and it was time to pick my choices for my career, for uni or college, and I put down a whole lot of design courses because, again, still thinking about being an architect like Greg Brady. Photography, I was interested in photography. Film, but not being an actor. I was just interested in film and photography. And then I picked drama because my drama teacher was a great teacher, Kate Donnellan, said, you should do drama, because you're very good at it. You should. So still, I hadn't really decided to do the thing that I was made to do. I still had my eyes open for other things. But it was good. I had her guidance. I picked drama, and that got me into Rusden College, which is now called Deakin University, where I did a course to become not only a performer, but also a teacher, like a drama teacher. So I did drama, media studies, and part of the course was that I had to do dance. I didn't want to do dance. I had to walk around in a leotard for a year, tights. I didn't want to do that. But you know what? I'm glad I did it because now, later on in life, I've done so many musicals where I've had to dance. That experience actually helped me get over the line. So again, I didn't block it. I did it, and it was great. And I got honours for it too, which is I passed really well. So I'm glad I did it in the end. So there I am at Teachers College, and I remember when I was in year 12, and I was doing I was stressing out a bit about the exams and all that sort of stuff, and my dad said to me, why don't you not do drama? Why don't you become instead of being like a drama performer, why don't you become like an accountant? You're very good at maths as well. I was good at maths, and I wasn't very good at English, but I was good at maths, and I was very good at drama. But he said to me, you're good at maths, why don't you become an accountant instead of doing like drama? Because he realised I was stressing out over exams and the whole thing. And that's one thing I didn't do, but he came from a Greek background where your family thinks about your security and your safety, and the dream is kind of, the Greeks are very hard workers. There's a lot of nationality. We came to this country and we're here to work hard and build our foundations. So when it came to doing something that was kind of airy-fairy, a bit dreamy, he wasn't sure. Now, later on, when I was successful, he became my biggest fan. So I finished high school, I went to university, I started doing drama. I was the only Greek kid at Rusden, and I was young. There was people there, students there that were like in their 40s and 50s. I had to do a kissing scene with a 40-year-old woman. I couldn't believe it. I'm a 17-year-old boy, and I'm having to do this kissing scene. I haven't even got a girlfriend yet, and I've had to do this kiss. So that was a big experience for me. So it really opened my eyes up. So there I am doing it. I didn't want to be a teacher. It was also a teacher's college. I didn't want to be a teacher. That wasn't my thing. But because I was there at Rusden studying drama, I learnt about all the different styles of theatre, and I was doing media studies, so I learned about TV production in front and behind the camera. I was doing dance, so I knew a lot about theatre production from the dance. We also did music. We also did film studies as well. I was making films. So that gave me a great grounding for everything that I'm involved in now. I got a great education from Rusden. So I'm really glad that I did that course. But while I was there doing that course, that's when my opportunities came up, because being the only Greek in a university or a college filled with, they were all Anglo-Australians. There's only a few of us. There was one Italian guy and me and a Greek, and then probably another guy, an Asian guy and an Indian guy, and that's it. So I didn't really come up with this style of humour that I do now until I met a friend of mine, Simon Palomares. So Simon Palomares and I started working together because we kind of realised, and the thing that happened to me is I got sick when I was studying at the college. I got sick, so I took a year off. So again, fate took me somewhere. So sometimes you don't have control of your destiny. It takes you, and then you just have to follow. And I met Simon Palomares, who's a fellow actor, and 25 years later we're still working together. He became like a brother to me. And this is the guy that I ended up doing a lot of these shows, Acropolis now and Wogs Out of Work, and lots of stand-up shows, because we more or less found each other and worked together and gave each other strength. And so I found Simon. I was doing a play by Václav Havel, who's a Czech Republic, I think it was Czechoslovakia then, a playwright. He ended up becoming the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, so that's how well he went. You know, normally, you know, actors and performers are like the next thing to prostitution, that's us. But look at him, he became the Prime Minister of Czechoslovakia. So there we go. So we're doing the play together. He was doing sound and lights, I was performing, we made a friendship. Then later on, I did another project at Rusden, which was community theatre. I only did it because there was a really hot chick doing it, and I thought, she's nice, I'll do what she's doing. So, but fortunately for me, I made that decision, had nothing to do with my career, but I made the decision and I went over there, and Simon was in that group too, and again we worked together. And on that show we put together like a stand-up comedy duo, like Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin or Abbott and Costello, called the Tiboldi Brothers. The Tiboldi Brothers is like a comedy duo that introduced us into the professional world of comedy. These two characters were like like the Blues Brothers, but they were sort of shifty kind of mafia Italian guys that were selling test tube babies. You know, remember IVF started around the mid-80s, you know, people talking about it. So we were making fun of that. And we called ourselves the Tiboldi Brothers because Tiboldi was a salami at the time where everyone died from salmonella poisoning. So that's why we called ourselves the Tiboldi Brothers, to make a little character out of that. The Tiboldi Brothers, the sons of salmonella, the brothers of botulism. There we were doing a 1-minute scene in this community theatre show that we were taking to factories and offices and old people's homes and, you know, the Lygon Street Festa, and doing street theatre. And eventually those two characters we took, when we finished at college, we took them out and we started trying professional work. Now Simon, my friend, had worked with me in the past. He had worked on his own doing some kind of stand-up. He did some stand-up tryouts. But I'd never done it before. I never even thought about being a stand-up comedian. And he said to me, you want to do this? We finished college, you want to make some extra money? We can go out and do some of the comedy clubs in Melbourne. So I said, yeah, I'll give it a go. Why not? I didn't know. And I had a look at a whole lot of videos then. We had videotape. We didn't have DVDs then. We had a videotape. I had a look at, you know, people like Australian comedians such as Rodney Rude. You guys know about Rodney Rude? And then and Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor. These guys were really huge at the time. So I had a look at these videos. Robin Williams. And I went, yeah, I could do that. I could do that sort of thing. So myself and Simon, as a comedy duo, went out and did some tryouts. Now, a tryout, they call it open mic too. So you go to a comedy club, and like on a Tuesday, they won't pay you, but at least you can get up and have a go. And we went up, we had a go, and people actually liked what we did. You know, so after a while, the comedy club, which was Le Joke at the time and the Last Laugh in Melbourne, wanted to pay us to come again to do. So our routine built up from a 1-minute show to a 5-minute show to a 15-minute show. And because I could play guitar, when I was a kid, I learned to play guitar as well. I did the music side and Simon would do the comedy side, and then we'd get together and it became quite a good show. Within a couple of months, we had a guy that owned the Comedy Cafe in Brunswick Street in Melbourne, which is like a theatre restaurant, asking us to do a 5-week season. So he wanted us to do a 5-week season, a 2-hour show. We're just starting out. And he said, do you want to do a 5-week season at the Comedy Cafe? So we had to write a 2-hour show. What are we going to write about? I don't know. What are we going to write about? We'll do stuff. We'll do these test tube baby guys, these mafiosi sort of characters. Well, let's talk about what we do, the stuff we talk about around the table when we're at home, when we have a joke at home and you sit around the table, you know, you're playing cards or you're having dinner and you're telling jokes. Let's do that, but we'll do that to the audience. And we did that. We put the show together and people started coming to see us because they could relate to what we're talking about. You know, if you're from an ethnic background, you can't relate sometimes to the Pack to the Rafters stories or the Neighbours stories because there's no ethnics on Neighbours. There's no ethnics on the Pack to the Rafters. But all of a sudden there was 2 ethnic Australians on stage, a Spanish Australian and a Greek Australian, talking about what it's like, you know, Christmas time, you know, in our household, or what it's like, you know, what the decor's like, or what it's like, you know, when you have a party as compared to the Aussie barbecue, we're drinking beer, the Greek barbecue, you're cooking a lamb on the spit, is totally different. And people going, yeah, we're a bit like that too. And it wasn't just Greeks and Spaniards that came to see our show. It was Italians, and it was Indians, and it was, you know, Arabs, and it was, you know, people that could relate to the family, the ethnic family, the fish, you know, living out of the norm situation, a fish out of water. Yeah, we related to that. And then we had a lot of Aussies coming to see the show who lived next door to people like us. He went, yeah, I know, I used to hang around with guys like, actually, I'll go see the show too. So we got almost like a cult following. So people were coming to see us. And we did that 5-week season. It was very successful. And then we started, TV companies started knocking on our door going, do you want to come and do, there was a talent show called Star Search, which is kind of like The Voice, but it had different segments. It had a comedian segment, and it had a spokesmodel segment, and it had a dance segment, and it had a singer segment. So you, as a specialist in a type of entertainment, could get a really good break and exposure on Aussie TV by going on that show. So we went on Star Search. We did 2 episodes, and all of a sudden everyone around Australia knew who we were because we were exposed. Those days we didn't have Facebook and MySpace and all that sort of stuff. We just had TV. So we went on, people discovered us, people started asking us to come interstate to do shows. And later on I went on to Star Search on my own as a challenge because I really wanted to perform by myself. You know, Simon was like a security blanket to me, so I had to challenge myself. And I went out there and I did an episode of Star Search on my own, and I kept on winning and winning and winning and winning and winning and winning. And I got into the grand final, and I lost the grand final because I smashed a fish on stage, a live fish, and guts went everywhere, and it was a bit too much. But, you know, I was just trying new stuff, which is what you have to do when you're doing comedy. You have to try new stuff. You have to, you know, break new ground. So there we were. We got offers from interstate. We came up to Sydney and we did, on Oxford Street, there's a venue called the Hip Hop Club, which is now, I think, called the Good Bar. I'm not sure what it's called now, in Paddington there. And we did, you know, our show, Worry Beads and Fairy Dice. That's what it was called, because Greeks have got worry beads and, you know, young Mogs have got fairy dice on the mirror, and we had characters like a funeral, like an Italian funeral director, and an old Greek guy in Marrickville drinking coffee, and a couple of guys in a Monaro trying to pick up chicks, you know, and having brawls with like Lebanese gangs and doing all that. So all that stuff that was going on that time, we were telling those stories. And we were getting reviewed, and the reviewers were saying, oh my goodness, ethnic comedy has arrived at last. This is what these guys are doing. I go, that's what we're doing, Simon. We were just telling stories about ourselves, but apparently that's what we do, ethnic comedy. So all of a sudden we were holding up a banner and people were coming to see us doing all those shows. Now, you know, it's not the Italians and the Greeks now, the people that are telling those stories now. Ronnie Chang, who's Asian, who's like a huge comedian now, because that's the market now. There's so many Asian people in this country now that Ronnie Chang is like the next new big ethnic comedian. And people like the guys from Fear of a Brown Planet. I think one's Lebanese and one's Indian, I'm not sure. But they do a skit show on TV. They're very popular because that's the market now. There's so many people that can relate to their stories. So at the time, in the mid-'80s, you know, we had the Greeks and the Italians and a little bit the Lebanese really following us. So there we are. We're doing the Sydney show. We're in Paddington, and we're getting great reviews. And we're doing Melbourne, and then we go to Adelaide, and we're doing shows. So we're creating all these kind of markets, and we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We're still on the fringe, and then being an actor, because I never was serious about doing stand-up comedy, probably till now. Stand-up comedy is what I did to make a living in between gigs, in between me doing acting, theatre and TV and what have you. So it's not really what I wanted to do, but it was there and I did it. I took the opportunity. So I got an offer to do, I did a couple of TV shows, but I got an offer to do The Flying Doctors, to audition for The Flying Doctors. The Flying Doctors was a show that went for about 3 or 4 years. The Flying Doctors with, I don't know if anybody remembers this, in the middle of Australia, based on the Royal Flying Doctor Service. So if anyone gets sick in the middle of Australia, you can't go to the hospital down the road because there's no hospitals, you're isolated. So what do? You ring up and the plane comes out and picks you up and takes you to the hospital in Broken Hill, and you get better and then they take you back. So there was an offer for a character playing the radio operator. Now then they had radio operators, because now we've got mobile phones, we can be contacted anywhere. But then you couldn't be contacted, especially in the outback. So they'd ring the radio operator, which is the part that I went for. But they wanted an Italian guy. They wanted a guy called Dominic Giustino, because he was a radio operator and a bit of a funky DJ. So Dominic Giustino, DJ, the character was called DJ. And I said, why don't you call him Dimitri? If I'm going to do him, I'll be Dimitri Joannidis. How's that? I'm not going to be DJ. I got the part. I auditioned, I worked hard, I learned my lines, I did a great audition, and I got the part to play DJ on The Flying Doctors. And that was 3 years' work. But the great thing about doing that is I started working for a production company called Crawford's. And Crawford's Productions was a huge production company. They did a lot of shows. They did Prisoner, they did The Sullivans, they did a lot of big shows in those days. So, so that was a great grounding for me and a great education. And before, I've got to say, before then, when I got serious about doing acting, what I did was I opened up the phone book. These days we don't have phone book, we have Google. But then I opened up the phone book and there was a long list of acting agents, and I rang every agent in Melbourne and said, can I be on your books? Can I be on your book? Can you find work for me? A lot of people went and didn't reply. A lot of people said no, and then a couple said yes. So, but if I hadn't tried, I would never know. I got it, actually, the first agent I got into was like an extras agency. And like you're an extra when the scene's happening in the front, you're in the back, you know. You might see it on Neighbours or something, a couple of people having a coffee in the background, or the waiter that pours which is a good thing for me to do, because I was a bit nervous. When you get on the TV set, there's lights, there's cameras, there's crew, there's people everywhere. You get a bit nervous. So it's actually good for me to be an extras agent at the start. The first scene I had to do was I was on Neighbours and I had to pour a wine for somebody and I actually missed the glass because I was so nervous. So that was good practice for me. I did a couple of months at the extras agency, and then one of the agents called me and said, you know, we'll have a look at you. That's the one that put me on the ethnic list. And then another agent, a better agent, called me, and then I went into that agency, and all of a sudden I was part of the mainstream. That's the stuff you have to do. You have to audition. I auditioned once for a part. It was a Greek guy that owned a fruit shop before Con the Fruiterer. And I said, how am I going to get this part? What am I going to do? You need a bit of a plan. You need to plan ahead. You know, they're not going to call you on the phone and say, you know, do you want a job? You have to go out there and find the job sometimes, you know. And that's the thing. That's the thing about getting work. No one's going to call you if you're just sitting around the house smoking a bong. The only person that's going to call you is the drug dealer because he wants to sell you more dope. That's the only person that's interested in you being lazy. You have to go out there and get the work. So I found out there was a part for this Greek fruit shop owner or whatever. So I walked in and I pretended I was Greek straight off the boat. I said, hello, my name is George Capinares. I'd like to try for the... And they believed me and I got the part. 2 months later, I went back to the same company for another audition. I go, hi, how you going? They go, gee, you learned to speak Aussie pretty quickly. So I actually tricked them. But sometimes you have to do stuff. You have to sometimes lie to get a job. Sometimes you have to trick people, but it's part of the game. You've got to get out there, you've got to do it, you've got to talk, you've got to find out what's going on. So there I am, working for Crawford's, doing the Flying Doctors. My friend Simon now, who was part of the comedy duo, has had to do his own work because, you know, George is busy. So he met up with a guy called Nick Giannopoulos. Now, you might know Nick Giannopoulos because he was recently in production of The Wog Boy at the Enmore Theatre, and he's done a couple of movies. But Nick was actually at Rusden with us. So I didn't meet Nick then. I saw him, but I never actually talked to him. But Nick and Simon were in the same year, so they knew each other. So there you go. There's another opportunity for Simon. So, but Nick wasn't at Rusden for a long time. He got expelled because it didn't suit him, and he was a bit of a smart ass and the whole thing. So he got kicked out, but then he went to the Melbourne College of the Arts to do acting. So that suited him more. So he was well trained at the Melbourne College, and he met people then that he worked with later on. So there I am, doing the Flying Doctors for 3 years, you know, on TV, getting a bit of a name for myself. Simon's having to do some stand-up comedy on his own. He's doing really well. He meets up with Nick. They say, you want the Melbourne International Comedy Festival was about to start in that year. Now, let's do a show. They didn't have a lot of money. They got a spot, a 10:30 spot at the Universal 2, the theatre. You know, it was a fringy sort of theatre, only 200 seats. Let's do a 10:30 show. It won't cost us much to hire the space. You're a wog out of work. I'm a wog out of work. We'll get another girl, Maria Portesi, who was Italian. She's a wog out of work. Why don't we call the show Wogs Out of Work? So they did that. Simon used the stuff that we were doing. Nick sort of had his own kind of stand-up comedy. Maria had her own stand-up. She was like a drama teacher, but she had developed a couple of funny characters herself. They put all these characters together, and they put a show together called Wogs Out of Work, and that show became the highest grossing Australian comedy ever. We did, and they invited me back to do that show. There's 14 of us that actually did that show. Over 3 years, that show did 3 years of shows, over 700 shows. I'm not sure how many shows they did. It made over $3 billion. I don't know. It made a lot of money. There was 14 of us. There was 2 companies going around at the time, touring the whole of Australia. And because that show was so successful, my company, Crawford's, that I was doing the Flying Doctors with, said, you know those guys, don't you? You guys want to talk about maybe putting together a TV show. Now, this opportunity doesn't happen to people. We were lucky because the show was so successful. I was at Crawford's at the right time. You know, if you went to a company now and said, I really want to do a TV show with you guys, I've got a great idea, they wouldn't even look at you. They wouldn't even listen to you. But we were lucky. They approached us. Because the guy at the time, the director, Hector Crawford, who was a very, very famous producer, came to a Wogs Out of Work show. He sat in the audience with 800 Greek, Italian, Lebanese, and the rest. And sitting in the middle, he was watching the show. He didn't understand the show, but he could see that everyone was laughing so loud that he thought, there's something in this. So then he said to us, you want to put together like a sketch show? They wanted us to do a sketch show like, you know, the Comedy Company or Fast Forward. I don't know if you guys remember any of those shows. And we said, no, we want to do a show. We want to do a show like a sitcom, like Happy Days, you know, because sitcoms were really big in those days. A bit like kind of, what's the show with the nerds at the moment? Yeah, Big Bang Theory. We want to do something like that, you know. We want to do a sick comedy. Cheers was huge at the time. We all loved Cheers. We want to do a sick comedy because there wasn't a lot of sick comedies in Australia. They go, all right, well, you guys go away and write it. And then, you want us to write a sitcom? We just like these guys that just started doing stand-up comedy and acting. You want us to write a sitcom? They go, don't worry, we'll get you the best script editor, the best story editor in the country. They'll help you. So we ended up creating our own show. You know, 3 guys with not much experience got this great opportunity. If we said, no, we don't do that, and walked out, that would have been the end of our careers. We said, all right, we'll give that a go. That's what you've got to go. We'll give that a go. So there we go. We got the opportunity. We put together a show. We did a pilot. So you do a pilot, and if the pilot is successful, like a trial episode, then they hire you to do a season. So we got a pilot. We did it. They hated Nick. And Nick's probably the one of the most successful out of all of us. He's gone furthest, I guess, with his career. They hated Nick. We bailed him out. We said, no, we really need him. So we brought him back in and we did a series. The series was successful. We got another series and we did Acropolis Now, which is this series here. And we did five series. So 5 years we were writing and doing this and doing live shows of this. Became pretty successful and we created a huge market. And that was Acropolis Now. So I played, you know, like a traditional sort of Greek. Nick played like a petrol head, disco bunny sort of Greek. And Simon Palomares was sort of like a yuppie ethnic, you know, who wasn't really into his ethnicity. He was more trying to be like the rest of the Anglo-Aussies. So that was our characters. And then another character that we wrote for the show came in, and that was Mary Custis, and she was Effie. Now, Effie's huge. Does anyone know about Effie? She was like the Fonz in Happy Days. And all of a sudden, they're going, oh my God, there's a woman now doing not only stand-up comedy, there's a woman playing an ethnic character. It was huge. And so many women could relate to Effie. Because you know, in those days, everyone had a buff head. Everyone had a big afro. Oh my God, we're just like her. We love her, you know. So she was huge as well, and that launched her career. But she didn't get the part by actually being our friend. We wrote the part. She suited the part. She was our friend at the time. She was a young actress working as a waitress because, like I said before, 99% of us are unemployed. So you've got to do something else to make a living, you know, and when you get the opportunity to do the thing you're passionate about, you do it. But I've been lucky. I've never had to do any other job apart from what I'm doing. This is probably the most out of what I do. But a lot of people have to do another job and then, you know, 10% of their time, you know, they can do something that they really love. So she got the opportunity to come into the show. It launched her career. Show was very successful. And then at the end of that show, you know, we did five series. We could have done another one, but everyone couldn't get together and what have you. And then I decided that I really wanted to do some serious acting as well as funny acting. You know, so I tried to get into the Melbourne Theatre Company, which is like the STC, the Sydney Theatre Company, and do some, you know, I did some musical theatre. And that was a big challenge too. I was asked to do a musical theatre show, which I auditioned for, and I had to sing. Now, I knew how to play the guitar, and I could sing a bit, but I was challenged, and I did a show called Return to the Forbidden Planet, and it was offered to me. I could have said no, and it was probably offered to me because I had a bit of a profile now on TV. I could have said no, but I said, no, I'll give it a go. Now, my singing wasn't the best, and I copped a bit of flack for doing it, you know, and sometimes people think, did you make the wrong move? But because of that, I actually put a band together straight after that called The Flares, and I toured with that band for years, doing kind of a, you know, it was a disco cover band, but that was a great grounding for my singing. So since then, I've done, you know, 3 or 4 more musical theatre shows, and that's by me not blocking, by me saying yes, I'm going to take that opportunity and do it. So over the years, you know, I stopped doing kind of stand-up and tried to get into serious acting, doing shows for the Melbourne Theatre Company, you know, films, And my aim in life, and you've got to have an aim or goal, was to keep working. Sometimes I think it's a curse. Sometimes I wish I'd done something else. You know, I'm thinking, what could I do if I wasn't an actor? You know, I'm seriously, even now, 30 years later, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to stay in this business? You know, I'm not a good-looking young little stud anymore. I'm a 52-year-old guy. There's not many parts for me. And I'm lucky because I can do stand-up comedy to fill in the gaps. But what am I'm thinking maybe I can become a auctioneer, because that's kind of like stand-up comedy. I'm seriously thinking about doing a course, you know, in real estate, so I could become an auctioneer, because at least you stand in front of a group of people and you sell a house, but you're still doing a similar sort of thing. So you really have to keep inventing the wheel, keep thinking about what else can I do. But at the moment, I'm still busy working. Over these 3 weeks while I'm here doing these talks, I'm also doing, I just did the Fat Pizza movie, playing, you know, which I've done a few times, and they keep inviting me back to play all these guest roles. I'm doing a film called Alex and Eve, which is a movie about, you know, a Greek-Australian boy who falls in love and marries a Lebanese Muslim girl. It's a little bit controversial, but very, you know, that's kind of like their Wogs Out of Work of now, you know, so hopefully that'll be a success. I'm doing these chats, I'm doing stand-up comedy, I'm doing some shows. I'm doing a show in Smithfield, RSL, on the 6th. So if you want to check me out doing some stuff, you can come to Smithfield RSL and see me I'm doing a show called The Good, the Bad and the Ethnics. And that's myself with Joe Avardi, who's an Italian comedian, and Tahir, who's a Turkish comedian, and Rob Shahidi, who's a Lebanese comedian. And the thing that's different between me and those boys are passionate. Sometimes they're more passionate about doing what they're doing than I am. But Joe Avardi started off as a food scientist. He did a university course as a food technician. He invented a flavour of the Magnum ice cream. But his passion was stand-up comedy, and he started doing tryouts at the Comedy Store, for example, and people started following. Then he did a lot of weddings, like he'd do MC weddings. More people followed him. Then he put his comedy, he put it viral. He put it on like, what would you call it, a podcast. I don't know if it's called a podcast, but he put it like 10 years ago, he put a podcast, maybe longer actually, maybe 15 years ago, a podcast on the internet, and these people in Canada heard his podcast and they discovered him because he's Calabrese, so he's a part of Italy that's got almost a dialect of their own. There's a lot of Calabrese that live in Toronto in Canada. They discovered Joe, so they booked him for a theatre show, but instead of one theatre show with 2,000 seats, he got 21 theatre shows in one booking. They kept on rolling over, and there was such a demand for his type of comedy that they've named a pizza after him in Toronto. That's how huge he is over there. So that was his kind of stepping stone into success. Tahir is he was a school teacher, but he really wanted to do comedy. He eventually went on Fat Pizza, played Habib, and is a great stand-up comedian, and he gave up doing teaching, and since then he's been doing the same sort of stuff to what I'm doing. Rob Shahidi was what did he do? He was some sort of salesman. He's, I think, air conditioning. He sold air conditioners or something like that. But he was a big fan of Acropolis Now, which was the show that I did. You know, 20 years later, he and I are working together. So he saw his dream, he followed it, and he got it. So it's about knowing what you're doing. So there we are. We're doing that show together now. I'm still working together after 30 years. You know, people sometimes say, oh, it must be amazing what you do. It's a job. It's a job. I was doing the full Brazilian the other night, and I was there getting ready, and they put makeup on you and all that sort of stuff. There was another celebrity next to me. The girls were talking. What did you do today? Oh, I did the washing and had to take out the garbage and then pick up the kids from school and blah, blah, blah. But you're a celebrity. But you're doing a normal, that's what you do. You might be a celebrity, but you're a normal person underneath. It's what you make of yourself. It's about having a go. So I'm actually very, very happy I'm in this business. I'm very proud to be an actor. You know, sometimes there's good things that happen. Sometimes there's things that don't happen. For example, someone asked me the other day about an audition. What happens when you fail an audition? You know, there's some auditions that I've succeeded. I did an audition for an insurance company in South Australia. I did one audition. I got this part. 12 years later, I'm still doing this ad. 12 years later, I'm still from one audition. And it's because I kind of... This is an ad in Adelaide, but they couldn't find anyone in Adelaide. And they asked me to audition. They wanted like a George Costanza from Seinfeld sort of character. So when I thought about how I was going to audition, I thought, I'll learn it in like a George Costanza accent, like an American accent. And then when I do the audition, I'll do it in an Australian accent. And I got the part because it was a great audition. I did another audition recently for The Lion King. I missed out. I missed out 10 years. I did that same audition 10 years ago. I did about 5 auditions. And Disney do a lot of, when they do a production, they're very strict. You have to do it the way they want it. So I was up for the part, and this guy from New Zealand, Jamie, beat me to the part. So he ended up playing The Lion King. So 10 years later, I'm doing Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I'm in musical theatre. I'm very, very confident. They've asked to audition for Timon, the Hakuna Matata, that character. I've gone, I'll do it. I know the part. So I went to the audition. They loved my audition. I went straight into the finals. I was up for the final audition. So I'm waiting for the audition for them to give me a phone call to tell me, all right, it's going to be on Tuesday. Tuesday went, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I ring up my agent. I go, what's happening with your audition? They've gone, oh, it's been taken by someone. Okay. She didn't tell me who it was. I do a bit of research on Google. I find out the guy that did the part was Jamie again, the same guy that beat me to... So he'd given up the part, I don't want to do it anymore. And then probably when he had to work in a cafe or something, you know, and then took it up again. So I missed out on the part. But the good thing about that is that at least people saw me trying out. They got to see what I was like, you know. Even when you miss out on things, it can still be a positive thing because people meet you, they know who you are. The next time they need someone, they might call you.